Hello and welcome along to another edition of the Andrew Eborn Show, and a very special edition it is too because I'm joined by the fabulous Amanda Eliasche. How are you doing, Amanda?
Hi, how are you? I'm ringing from Barbados, so I hope we won't get cut off.
Well, I love it when you look out at this world. There's you.
I know exactly, and I can't see you. It's most unfair. Oh yes, I can. Hello,
Great.
you're wearing a suit. I'd have worn a suit for you.
Oh, I love
You're
it.
very smart.
Fashion. Well, thank you. And coming from
and you
the
look
Marilyn.
extremely. I'll put on a jacket for you. It's going to be a pity not to wear a tie too.
Oh, well, I tell you what, but always you're looking so wonderfully glamorous. And the Marilyn Monroe dressed as a gothic Japanese schoolgirl.
Yes, well, that's my friend Katie that said that. Katie Glass, that fantastic journalist for the Times.
They're always.
And she's a wonderful wit.
Always very good. So you're in Barbados at the moment with my good chum, Alison Jackson as well.
I love Alison. I've just been speaking to her. She wants me to go and stay next door to her.
No, we said what we do. We get a three-way conversation going next time as well, which we rather.
Oh, brilliant. I absolutely adore her.
And your paths have crossed on all sorts of things. The fantastic thing which has been dominating the headlines at the moment about Inside Chelsea. And
oh yes, well I did that television, which was like a tricky thing, but anyway, we did it. It's very difficult to. They wanted to only interview rich people, really. And the fact is, I'm not rich. Despite my despite my reputation, I'm not as rich as they would like. They would like billions and billions and billions. But anyway, I thought that Alison, she's very good in Chelsea because she actually helps. She's on the council. She's the head of the council, I think.
No,
so she's extremely.
And also she's done some wonderful things in the Chelsea Theatre there as well.
Yeah, she has. And I once did a play there as well. I mean, it's an incredible new theatre. I mean, before it was good because, I just wanted to do things in Chelsea because, of course, I live there. Yeah. And it's good to be in that environment, really. It's also got that incredible council estate, which is not really a council estate because it's so glamorous. It's sort of brutalist architecture. Anyway, I love it there. What can I say? I love Chelsea, but I'm here.
Yeah, well, what I love about...
I'm here to do a shoot.
Oh, no,
I think we're doing some opera singer look-alike of Melania. It's going to be fantastic.
Fantastic. Oh, it's got to be good. Well, what I love about Chelsea, it's that juxtaposition of the rich and the poor, isn't it? I mean, it's got some of the biggest, wealthiest.
Yes, I mean, what is great is that there's a sort of facade. We're the facade in the smart houses, but behind is equally pretty. And they've got incredible houses there. And one of them, actually, the other day I was helping a man who was a seaman. He'd lost his job as a seaman. He couldn't carry all his food, so I had to help him. And I asked him, I said, how did you get this fantastic flat? I mean, he said, I was homeless on the street and they gave it to him. So, it's got, and then there's Glass House at the end of Chelsea Manor Street. And, I've just helped them because I lost the bet because I said Trump would get in. Well, he did get in. It's just they cheated, okay? It depends how you look at things. But anyway.
I love it. And I would come on to your conspiracy theories and things like that and political beliefs in a bit as well.
Yes, I like big characters. If they're going to work for us, I want a big character. I don't have to like them. They don't have to be charming or nice. I just want them to do a job for us. People worry too much about Twitter. I don't give a damn about Twitter. But anyway, other people do. I don't really care. I just care whether or not we're living an okay life and we're not being blown up. At the moment, it's very difficult with COVID because COVID is a tragedy. And whatever the conspiracy is, true or not, it's terrible for most people.
Oh, no, it's absolutely terrible. Well, you and the fantastic socialite, you'd normally be out and about, exhibitions, art and music.
We haven't been out for a year.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must be going stir crazy, aren't you?
Well, I am actually. I have to say, I love going out and it's completely destroyed my wardrobe. No, I don't know what, you have no reason to put on high heels. You have no reason to look glamorous. You have no reason to have any fun. You have no reason, it's very difficult and you have to keep yourself buoyant. and interested. So I started making a book on hats, anything to keep ourselves sort of in the moment. You know, I was obsessed by politics. I've gone obsessed by money-making techniques, which I'm useless at, and all sorts of things you find down the rabbit hole, which you wouldn't normally see, you know. So I suppose that's the good thing about last year, is you really learned who your friends were.
Well, I think that's right, though, isn't it? I mean, as you say, you're doing this fantastic book on millinery, and you've got also your whole thing about survival reset. Talk to me about that.
Yes, well, you know, I was thinking, I always thought that when I was young, you know, when I was 20, I thought that we'd have a nuclear bomb. And I was obsessed by nuclear survival. Of course, we wouldn't survive, you know, but I was trying to attempt it. And then I thought, well, you know, it's a very dark moment in history. And whether or not we like the people involved, it's dark. And COVID is dark. And so I thought that I better just try and make a sort of a list of survival things that you need, from, you know, hammers. Of course, mine was very glamorous. My friend's wasn't glamorous at all. I told her, be glamorous because you'll get further. You know, she was very practical. And I said, but, you know, you don't want to look like everybody else. She said, we do. Okay, so we had completely conflicting ideas. I said, I don't want to look like Antifa. She said, you do want to look like Antifa. So we had very different views. And food is a big problem. You know, I think go and get those shakes, you know, in boxes. You know, those sort of diet shakes. You know how many calories you're having. Well, get a few of those and put them in the cupboard, just so you can add them with water. And I don't know how to put up a tent. You know, I've forgotten. I learned at 8 and I've never done it ever again. So it's sort of, there are lots of skills. You suddenly think, my God, I need to learn to make a tent. I need to learn how to use what is it called? A burner.
Oh, yes, I remember those, the Bunsen burners you used to
the Bunsen burner. And you know, I'm useless at all those things. All I like doing is watching Trini, you know, put on her makeup. So I'm thinking, my God, how do I change my whole life being very practical? Anyway, it was a very interesting morning. And, you know, I learned a lot of things, like you need a real radio, the old fashioned type, nothing that goes on electric.
Oh, no, fantastic. Well, you have wind up radios as well you can get now, can't you?
Yes, exactly. That's what she wants you to get. And, you know, she doesn't want you to buy anything at Amazon because, you know, Amazon's the big bad boss, and any of the billionaires, don't support them.
Don't support the
like last week, really, you know, with, what was it called? You know, that huge scam, financial scam, which all the workers did against the boys in Wall Street. I thought that was very clever.
You know, very clever how they reversed it, didn't they?
Yes, they did. I don't know how they deal with it now. I mean, they might be very long on these stocks. I'm not sure I'd want it now. What's it called? GameStop.
Yes, exactly. So, exactly what happened. So the big boys and girls, they thought we would short it. In other words, they'd borrow some stock and basically pay for it later. And of course, the clever people, there weren't that many in circulation, they pushed the price up and it skyrocketed, didn't it?
Yes, amazing. I hope they all got out of it quickly.
Well, I hope so. But there's always, what I love about your life, and I've seen all sorts of movies, slightly conflicting stories, but maybe we can correct some of those. It's always that little sense of mischief, but a sense of intelligence and purpose as well. Is that fair?
Well, I would say that, you know, I'm a rebel. My ex-husband used to say, as a rebel without a cause, definitely. And, you know, I don't see, you know, I believe in Wag the Dog, you know, that amazing film. I believe that everything is fake unless I see it myself. And even then it might be fake. So I don't like to believe anything that we see. You know, Boris goes into number 10. He's perfectly normal. He's fighting for us British. He goes in there and he comes out and says, we've got COVID. You know, there's always, I don't really believe almost anything. Of course, people are dying of COVID, which is a great tragedy. But I don't like the vaccine, and I don't know what we'll do in the future, because I think it's a terrible tragedy. They just want to get rid of us. Give us a
well, and I think that your views on that, I know they're not very popular views, but you talk about not the pandemic, but the plan-demic. So well,
I just think, you know, it's a bit, there's no smoke without fire. You know, Wuhan appears an awful lot. Bill Gates appears an awful lot. Who's going to make the money in this? You know, it's not popular, no, because people they want to have faith in these guys. Well, I'm sorry, if you're making loads of money, it's very difficult to be honest.
But that's an interesting thing. But the one thing I do absolutely agree on, and we share a number of things, including the same initials, Andrew Eborn, Amanda Eliasche.
Eliasche. How do you do?
How do you do? Nice to see you again. We had met at a few parties with Alison.
Yes, we have.
What I love though is the principle of question everything, because perception is the ultimate deception, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that's where we've been. You know, when the press go, the press are just dreadful. I mean, there's no free press. I would hate to be a journalist at the moment because you can't tell the truth. You know, if you're working for Sky, you'll be told, no, the evil bastard is Trump, but he might not be. And Biden is very questionable with all his stories behind him. So, you know, I'm sorry if his son has got all those pictures on the net, which anyone can find, we have to question these things. And Sky and BBC have all taken this very, this sort of weird line that everything they say is true. They were never like that. The BBC always were, you know, when I was growing up, I liked them. They would just tell you factually what was going on. They didn't really have an opinion. They get somebody else in for an opinion.
Yeah, I say to our children now, I mean, the way we consume the news is you have to get it from several sources.
Yes, so you have to.
Otherwise, somewhere the truth is between all of them, isn't it?
Now, yes, and now we have a problem because they've indoctrinated the mainstream media so much that we don't hear any truth at all from mainstream media. You might get tiny bits. And in the Borough, down the rabbit hole, which is much more fun to be, especially with you, whatever we are on, I feel basically that we can't guarantee that either, because who they're bringing on may or may not know the truth.
Oh no, and it's only one person's version of the truth.
Yes. Exactly. I mean, there are lots of people on there that I'd like to believe, but I'm not sure I can. And you know what is terrifying? In the beginning, in 1996, I read a fabulous book called The Biggest Secret by David Icke, who everybody used to kill themselves with laughter over. But actually, he's proven to be right over almost everything. And you begin to think, oh my God, you know, perhaps we should be listening to the conspiracy theories every day and not to, you know, whoever's on the news.
Well, I think you have to listen to both, is the honest.
Yes, you do, and juggle it. Yeah. And it's terrible because if you're wanting to live a sort of clean and sweet life, it's very difficult to do so at the moment.
I think you're absolutely right. And the thing that happens, I mean, about the news, they always say that if you don't read the news, you're uninformed. But if you do read the news or listen to the news, you're misinformed.
Exactly. So you always need to know about the third page.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't look at the headline.
Your family, you mentioned about your early upbringings, and I've seen talk about the truth, because you've got to get different versions of it. And your play, which you mentioned about performing at Chelsea and also over in Hollywood.
Well, that was As I Like It. Yes, that was about my life, about my father made me write, because he was a good writer. Now, he was a good writer, and he wrote about the Second World War. And I had only met him about 10 times in my life. So he said to me, I want to see if you can write 5,000 words by the end of the weekend. So I quickly wrote down, and I thought, well, I'm not going to, you know, I don't really know him. I'll write about my upbringing. And so, because he doesn't know what was going on. And he, at 12 o'clock, he rang me and said, this is absolutely brilliant. And then at 5 o'clock, he said, don't do anything with it until we're all dead, and then make it into a film. That's the only reason I did it into a film. And one other reason, my ex-husband said to me, why are you going to the Cannes Film Festival? Like I was some silly tart. And I didn't want to say, really, well, it's because I want to see my lover. I didn't want to say that. So I said, well, actually, I'm going because I'm making a film. And so the next week I was making it because, you know, and that was a lesson in truth and lies, because everybody lies in film.
Well, and you say that, and I enjoyed very much, although it's both shades of dark and brilliance and excitement, but also,
I don't know how brilliant, you know, I can't even bear to watch it, to tell you the truth.
Well, I watched it.
It makes me want to vomit.
The gun, the cake, and the butterfly.
The butterfly, yes.
But there's some really dark moments in there, Amanda, and I was going to ask you about that, because there's some sort of quotes within that. You say a number of things, like in that you say, all my dreams died long ago?
Well, you know, when you're looking at it as a little girl, I was a great daydreamer. I would daydream about castles. You know, my mother had a very pretty cottage, but I sort of dissed the cottage. You know, I didn't like the cottage at all. And I would dream of huge castles, you know, and create ideas. I had great fantasy in my brain. And I watch children, and children have great fantasy, especially if you leave them alone with their fantasies. You know, you don't know what really they're thinking. You know, you'll say to them, stop daydreaming. Now, of course, that's ruined because of television and because of the computer. But before, if you remember, and it wasn't so long ago, we didn't have those things. And I was a terrific daydreamer. And so I would spend all day, every day dreaming about what my life was going to be. And never, I'm trying to think of anything. I would say that none of the dreams came true, but it doesn't matter because other things came which were fantastic, you know, and I met other people, and, you know, from a daydream, you learn something else, don't you?
I know you're absolutely right, but you also say, I mean, and people would say you've got the ideal life. When people are looking at things, it's always other people's lives that they love, and you have this glorious thing. You're a socialite. You're going to all these press.
Yeah, I know. They said a friend of mine used to say the person that they describe they want to be is you, Amanda, a sort of hot blonde with lots of clobber, and I suppose I'm a intellect without being an intellectual. If I say that to you, I couldn't go to Oxford. I'm very upset. My son always says to me, the worst thing about you is that you are not as clever as you would like to have been. You know, I'd like to have been a blue stocking, go to Cambridge and rule the world.
and you say that, and education and status is really important to you. I mean, you say in the movies about
I think I like those sort of dreams. You know, I want to go to Oxford University.
Eton. You wanted to get an Eton, didn't you? Yes.
Well, I think every boy should want to go to Eton. It's incredible there. I mean, I know it sounds snobby and ridiculous, but you know, snobby and ridiculous can be good too. You know, it teaches you how to get up in the morning and dress. When my son went for a year, and he only managed a year because, you know, he's a rebel too. He said that he didn't want to go, but he said the test to go to Eton was so fascinating that he passed, and he passed with flying colors. But the first year was about as long as he could take, you know, because, you know, you're putting on tails every day, you're putting on, you know, the necktie and everything. You're dressed up in frock, which is white tie, really, every day of your life. But he said it was the best education he'd ever had. And he wished he had stayed. You know, he went everywhere, my son, because he wanted to experiment like I did. You know, he went to the local school, he went to Eton, he went to USC in America, University of Southern California. And then I think he went to Northeastern, which is the same as the university that our Megan went to.
Our Megan, oh, she'd like
that.
Our Megan. No, she'd love that. It's rather good. But you mentioned about your son's school and Eton, and you're right about that whole sort of system. And
I think it should be available to everybody.
Oh,
you see,
absolutely.
My view is the few rich, and we need the rich. I mean, everybody forgets that we need the rich. We must encourage the people that are able to make money. We must, because we don't want to do it. Okay, so they do. And if they want to do it, let them do it. And so they must be encouraged all that they can. But equally, I really think that everybody should be given the opportunity to the highest standard of education. And that is, in my view, Eton, because I went to the other boarding schools, and, you know, they might think Westminster. Well, Westminster's in the middle of London, horrible school. You know, you don't want to be locked up and tied up, and you want to see some greenery and be able to play cricket as a child or boy. I also think it should be for girls too.
No, I absolutely.
I don't know what we would look like. I'd love to wear tails. I'd look like a cabaret artist.
I think any excuse to dress up, Amanda, I think you'd look.
I would love it. Tails. I'd have loved to have had the opportunity, but I think we should go to the highest standard, and then we'd have a brilliant country, because we've got so many amazing people in England. Yeah. And you know, and I think that they should all be given the highest standard. I also think we should learn Greek and Latin. I
agree.
Why are we thought to be thick until we're thick?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Amoa Massa match, if you put on your film as well, the first thing we ever learned was classics. And I started life professionally as a barrister. So we do.
Yeah, I can see.
You can see, you see.
You look fabulous.
Oh, thank you. I'll use that as a quote. So Amanda says I look fabulous. That's great. But talking about, education, and you talk about people's school days, and people, they say it's the best days of their life. In your film, they clearly weren't for you when you first started talking.
Because my first day, I walked into school age 3 and thought, I don't need to be here. I'm going to have a much better life not here. Because I was sort of jealous of my brother's education. He was learning things that I wasn't learning. And, but, he was only 18 months younger than me, and he could read quicker, and he could do all the things quicker than I could. And he had better education than I could, of course. And I didn't want to be in any girls' school much, We want to be with boys. I love boys.
But you talk about, and this is why I talk about whether it's artistic license or whether it's an accurate depiction of your life. You talk about being sent away to boarding school at a very tender age, and you talk about being bullied. Is that?
Oh, yeah, we were bullied endlessly. People are very wet nowadays. We were called fat. We were either too fat, too thin, too spotty, too ugly. There was always a problem, too smelly, too thick, too clever. There was never a positive. These things are dreadful, but they also hold you in good stead. Life is not going to be, it's not going to be sweet and lovely. It's going to have its ups and downs, and that's great too. It's not so bad having a bad day.
Well, but some, you say that, and people say it's very good for the soul and things like that. But
yes.
You say you went to school when you were 5.
Yes, I went to boarding school. I went to a place called Flexford House, and I was bullied because the girls were, I think they were about 2 years older.
2 years older than you.
Yes.
You used to play masters and servants, is what?
Yes, and I was their servant. That wasn't very good for me. I came back home and I had bruises all over my bottom, and my mother said, what on earth are these bruises? And it was even worse because, they'd move you, and then you were told off by all the students. Oh, you snitch. You know what it's like at boarding school.
I certainly do. And it's nowadays that people are sort of shining a spotlight on that, because the devastating effect that bullying can have years later.
Horrendous.
Sort of shapes people. They always say, show me a child till the age of 7, I'll show you the adult. There we are. That's the PC version of it.
Well, you really learn from the other students. I'm sorry, it's the other students. And the children can be much worse than any other headmistress or anything. Of course, there's some dodgy ones, but most of all, they leave you in peace. It's the children that can be expert sadists,
Oh, no,
they're not so nice to each other.
No,
and they don't know that it's wrong either, and they don't care that it's wrong. But you see, we're living in a PC time, and heaven knows what it's like now. I'd probably go to school and not recognize it at all. They'd be all so nice. Oh, I wouldn't understand that.
What do you think about the PC time?
I'm not into PC. Political correctness, I think, is the worst thing for democracy. And you know who said that? Gore Vidal. I think he's completely and utterly right. I don't know. It lacks freedom of speech. We lock up anybody that says freedom of speech. If a journalist is a good journalist, they end up in prison like, Julian Assange. You end up, you can't say anything. Last week, I got knocked off Twitter because I said the most ugly person in politics was actually not Donald Trump, as they kept saying, but actually Nancy Pelosi. And it showed in her face. I got knocked off Twitter for that.
Oh, did you? How long were you in Twitter jail for?
I don't know, because I haven't looked. I now call myself Ice Cream, meaning ice cream.
Trump had his 80 million Twitter followers.
Yeah, and they'll regret the day. One day, everybody will be crying that they've lost Donald Trump, because he was so much fun to tease.
Oh,
there you are. And tell me, Biden's half gone in the head, and he's wicked too. He's much more wicked than Trump. So, and Trump is like, he's like Oliver Stone said, a King Lear figure. He wants to be loved by his daughters, but he chooses the wrong daughter.
Oh yeah.
that's what not my quote, that's Oliver Stone's quote.
Oh, no, it's brilliant. I love Oliver Stone. And well,
I love him too.
Donald Trump is the poster boy for Alison Jackson's work.
Yes, I know. And sometimes I get very cross with her. I say, you're so mean to him. But you know, it's like Mickey Mouse, isn't it? The cat and the mouse were always, what is it? Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry.
Yes.
Tom and Jerry. You know, they were so mean to the cat. He was so mean to the cat.
And we missed that. But Donald Trump was a gift, wasn't he? A gift for journalists. And he must have occupied more column inches than any president in history. Oh, you look as though you've frozen, Amanda. Amanda's back with us. As soon as she was cut off Twitter, she mentioned the very name and she disappeared from the screen. She's now joined us back again. Thomas,
you see, we're not allowed to talk about so much.
Oh, it's big brother's watching, you know. Talk about Orwellian. You have a
yes,
look,
it is.
Instantly. There are more
Animal Farm.
Theorists, absolutely. You know,
we are living at Animal Farm, which is why I'm here. I think I got a call.
And we're back again. I've retired. So don't mention Twitter, don't mention Tom and Jerry, and don't mention George Orwell, because you're right. As soon as you do, you get cut off. We are living in this Orwellian society where coincidentally things happen and we attribute it to something bad, don't we? And if you were mentioning about Animal Farm, which character would you be in Animal Farm?
The little pony. I can't remember the name of the pony, but I quite liked the pony when I was reading about it. I think it went off in the distant. I don't know, darling. I don't know what happened to it in the end because I can't remember it. But I remember, oh my God, this was dreadful. That was just like school, actually.
Look, but we were talking about school and the bullying that happened at school.
Yes.
But, and obviously, I mean, you yourself came from an extraordinary family, if you don't mind my saying so.
Yes, I would say I did. Thank God.
Rich history, thank God, absolutely. Rich history with your grandfather, fantastic film producer, St. Trinian's in 1960, and the glorious history with him. And before him, his father, obviously, was editor of the Evening Standard from 1960.
Yes, George Gilliatt. And my grandfather was called Sidney Gilliatt. He actually wrote the script for Lady Vanishes when Hitchcock did it, directed it. Hitchcock was not involved in the beginning. So they never thought they'd get Hitchcock. But anyway, they got Hitchcock. And as they arrived to the premiere, Hitchcock said to my grandfather, when I get my name is above the name of the film, I know I've succeeded. And with that, he went off to Hollywood. So there you are.
Fantastic. And you were your grandfather's favorite Lebanese granddaughter.
Lebanese, yes. But of course, I wanted to be his number one because I absolutely adored him. And I don't know why I adored him. I do, because he spent hours chatting to me, telling me, reading me Shakespeare. And I got to love Shakespeare because of that, you know. And it was very good for daydreaming Shakespeare, because you could always say, oh, I'm reading Shakespeare, and everybody would leave you in peace, you know. You might not be reading Shakespeare at all.
Oh, no,
but anyway, it's got all children do that. What?
I know that, but that's what we love. You can disappear into the Dylan Thomases, and you can
yes, exactly. I like Dylan Thomas, actually, funnily enough. I love Dylan Thomas, Under Milk Wood.
Yes, absolutely.
That's why I went to drama school, because I decided that I wanted to learn all the plays. So there's no way you could learn a play unless you went to drama school. And I really loved Under Milk Wood. Well, of course, it's a poem anyway. Yeah. But you reacted it out.
Yeah. And glorious, but you didn't start reading properly until you were about 9, did you?
No, because I have an illness called, well, it's not an illness, but it has affected me, but I didn't know what it was called. My mother was quite clever, because she said, there's something wrong, you know, because she was reading 5 books a day and you can't read. But anyway, she gave me some love stories and I immediately was able to read. But I have something called dyscalculia, which is actually figures. It's actually not letters at all. In fact, I love writing. But I can't see numbers. If you want to really upset me, give me a whole lot of numbers I spent hours. I had a love of trading about 2 years ago, and before the scammers, because there were scammers behind the trading, they took all the money. But before that, I colored the whole of my whole desk in different colors in order to know where everything was going. So that's how I dealt with figures. I can color them in.
I know, brilliant. But you did you've always had a love of words and music.
Yeah, I do love words.
And
I think it came from my grandfather, most definitely. It was the conversations at lunchtime. It was, you know, he made us love words. And I might not have been the best speller, but at least I knew, you know, I understood the words and I liked using them. And I was quite articulate. You know, when you're not good at one thing, your brain takes over and is able to do something else.
Oh, no, and it is miraculous like that. And I think it
yes,
does.
It is. It's so clever.
Yeah,
yes.
And talk about the universe. So you take away with one hand, but you can give something else to get that extra sort of quirkiness and the sort of passion. But talking, I mean, still with the troubled childhood. I mean, you talk in the gun, the cake and the butterfly about a horrendous incident which happened with the gardener.
Yes, when I was 7. Yeah, that was horrendous. He raped me, but I was even more horrendous when I look back on it, because I was always a rebel. I'd always see through things. So I thought at the time, my reasoning behind this was that I actually needed people to see this whole event. You know, you need to have some evidence. So I took all my friends from the village along and I said, this man's really weird and he has to go. And so I took all my friends along, and if we'd had an iPhone, we would have used that. Of course, in 1967, there was no such thing. So it had to be done on hearsay. But I remember the worst thing about this whole event was not the being tied up in his shed, but actually telling my mother and getting the police around. It was a horrendous experience. You know, at that time, if anything like that happened to you, you were persona non grata. And it was pretty horrendous, and it sort of stays with you. You know, it affects everything.
Well,
you know,
of course, and this
the smell, the whole thing, and you think, why does that happen to you? I found the village a very dangerous place, and I had to leave. That was my excuse.
But a horrendous incident. I mean, he was 76 and toothless.
And he was toothless and wore a cap. Yeah. Yes, I remember everything, and he smelt of fags. I remember everything. And I remember, well, we can't say that either. I can't say the whole thing, but I remember everything. I remember his skin looking very young, but he was 76. I thought, this is just unbelievable. You notice everything as a child. I was just the child that I am. I am now as an adult. And these things I could make humor out of, which humor, I do think we're losing humor. I think that PC is losing humor.
Well, I think sometimes
political correctness, they've forgotten how to laugh. Right. I mean, I managed to laugh it off, and I know that's just as irritating being self-deprecating in a way, but in a way that's how I've got through life, laughing at myself, you know.
Well, you sometimes need those sort of support mechanisms. You need to escape. I mean, it is absolutely horrendous. Did you get any help as a child after that?
No, I didn't want any help. I just wanted to be left alone, you know, just like everybody else, to grow up and be on my own. I didn't want anybody questioning anything, and I didn't.
And back with us, obviously the connection problems are very tricky. I mean, a very dark period.
Yes, and I would say that how I covered it up was I decided to get very fat. I looked in the mirror and I thought, what's wrong with you? And I thought, you know, you look too pretty for the village. I remember being very analytical at 7 and saying to myself, you know, you've got long blonde hair. I'm going to get very fat. So I immediately put on the weight in order for, but actually it doesn't stop anything. The village is dangerous. People who do things like this with children, and it's why I'm so anti-pedophilia now, and I'll fight you know, tooth and nail against it. And I say it's my number one charity, is because the damage it does is unbelievable. You have no idea. And it could ruin a whole life, you know, one instance when you're young. And satanic paedophilia, which goes on too, is even worse, horrendous. You will find that underneath the rabbit hole. You won't find that in
the rabbit. I mean, and you talk about, I mean, there's a lot of...
I hope this is an adult program.
Oh no, well, it certainly is now, Amanda. I think, no, but it's important. It's important that these issues are spoken about, because...
Yes, they are, and that's half the problem. We don't talk about them, and they have to be spoken about, and it's going on as we talk now. It's horrendous. And I would say one of the biggest, and why I like Trump the most, and especially Melania and Ivanka, is that they fought for this. They did a lot of work against it. They haven't succeeded, but they've brought it to the attention of many people if people listen to their speeches. Yeah. And well done on them, because it's not easy to talk about.
Well, I think anything.
And child trafficking, horrendous.
Yeah, and anything
and trafficking of any what?
Yeah, anything that shines a spotlight on areas where people don't talk about.
Yes.
And one of the charities you're now involved with is Elysium. Talk to me about that.
Oh well, Elysium was a long time ago. It was an art. It was art for poor people. You know, it's a Los Angeles charity, and I put in my art to help them. And it's a very good charity, and everybody should look it up. It's very, very good. There's a lot going on, but there's so much poverty in Hollywood. You know, I lived there for a bit, and there's so much poverty there that it's quite horrendous. How they could say that the Democrats do a good job down there. I hate to, that's a case where they do an appalling job. There's so many poor people on the streets, horrendous. I once stopped on the corner of a bridge and gave a girl some money. She was beautiful. I'll never forget her face. And she opened her mouth and I said, what's happened to you? And you know, she was in rags and everything. She said, I didn't have plan B. There you are. I didn't have plan B.
And a lot of people are going to be in that situation now, but not only plan B, but plan C and probably D and E.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you've had to use plan B and C and D as well. And I certainly have. But
the whole alphabet, I think absolutely.
I think I've got to Z. You know, I think it's getting there. I mean, really.
But it is extraordinary as well. And as I say, this is why it's so interesting looking at the child, because it does shape the adult, and also the relationship that you had with your mother, the opera singer. I mean, you talk about that, and that you really only liked her when she was singing. Talk to me a bit more about that side.
Well, I feel really cruel because I never told her actually I loved her, and that makes me very ashamed. And I asked her one day, why do I hate you? I can't remember when I hate you. And she told me the day I left my father, I never spoke to her again. She told me that. But I didn't, at the time, I didn't know, you know, I didn't know why she irritated me. I was very tidy, you know, and I have everything orderly, in an orderly fashion set out. If you saw my rooms, you'd understand. She's the opposite. I mean, I'd spend my whole time cleaning for her, and it would be a mess within 5 minutes. You know, she's one of those people, she'd turn it upside down. But you know, she read the script of this when I'd done it. And you know, she had enormous humor. And that's why I say humor is so important. And she read it all the way through and she said, well, I see nothing wrong in that. And it was actually terrible about her. And I was thinking, you're an amazing woman. I might not speak to you for five months for saying things like that about me. No, she was, if art was involved, she didn't mind what you were like. That's what she was like. And also, she would tell me I could sing when I couldn't sing, but I loved singing.
Sometimes, Amanda, it's only when you're a parent yourself that you appreciate your own parents. Is that
yes, right? Exactly. And you know, children are often very critical of their parents. I'm sure you have it. I don't know how many children you've got.
We have two wonderful children, absolutely.
Right. So, you know, they're very critical of their children, especially when they get teenagers and, you know, and I find it swaps, you know, one likes you more than another. And when you fall out with one, there's another one. The other one suddenly becomes your best friend. You know, I remember when I was going to have children, I thought I'll be a terrible mother. I'm not going to have any children. In fact, I swore that I wouldn't have any. And my mother went on and on at me saying, you must have children. Women who don't have children, you know, there's something that they lose. You must have one. Anyway, so, and she got me to do it because she saw me in the bath and she said, you you've still got puppy fat. And you'll lose that when you have babies. So I thought, oh my God, I'll quickly have a baby. And the minute, I have it. But she was a much better mother to them than I was. Like all grandmothers, they're incredible. Yeah. Grandmothers are the best, which is why I don't like, the other thing I hate about our society today is putting grandmommy in a home. She should be sitting at the dining room table, telling everybody off to sit up straight and telling them not to swear. And that's the problem with our society. We're not using our grandmothers who nagged us to death.
No,
brush your hair.
Absolutely. What? You also say that about your own sons, don't you? That they're your investment because you want to make sure you're not put in a home.
I think they'll put me in a home anyway. I think they're dying for me to be put in a home.
Oh, is that right?
But anyway, they're okay. We have a lot of fun together. They're incredible human beings, and I'm really pleased. I've got one called Miss Evie Lake. He was an amazing musician. He could play Chopin at the age of 10. He watched a concert pianist one day play the piano, and the next day he could play the pieces. But he was the day before not being able to do it, and I was thinking, how the hell's that happened? But he had a ability to act that I've very rarely seen. He was a really good actor. But now he's called Miss Evie Lake, and he's I'll do a shout out to him.
Oh, no, fantastic. And being in the movie.
He's a female impersonator now.
Wonderful.
I don't know how long for.
Well, we should have him on the show. It'd be fantastic.
You can get him on the show anytime you want to talk to him. I'm not his favorite person. You can always speak to him.
And that's the other thing as well. I mean, you do recognize, and you talk about this in some of the interviews you've given, is that you recognize that your mother actually bringing up 2 small children when she was quite young herself, she had to survive.
Yeah. And nobody else was divorced, by the way, I should add.
Yeah.
Because she left my father. He was a foreign correspondent for the Daily Mail. And I said, why did you leave him? And she said, oh, because he kept a gun underneath his pillow. She made it sound so glamorous. I left him. I couldn't. He'd make me go downstairs and look through people's suitcase. He would be downstairs while I had to go upstairs and rifle through their suitcases, So she didn't like living with him. I'd have loved that sort of man.
I know that sort of mischievous.
That's what I'm looking for. My favorite man. Well, I've got 2 favorite men. I love Sir Tim Rice, but I also love Stephen Bannon. Stephen K. Bannon will probably be cut off now. I think he's fantastic.
It is good. Well,
he's my total hero. What?
Oh, lovely. Well, what a surprise. I'll bring him on now. It should be great. But your mother at that stage, I mean, you talk about, and it all comes full circle in terms of looking at Chelsea and so on and so forth. Your mother, having had children at such an early age, she could only survive financially because your grandfather would send her £10 to help out.
Well, yeah, but it sounds so little now. But she made it, I don't know what on earth she did, but she sent me to boarding school with this. I had a pony. All my friends said, you're much more spoiled than I am. I don't know how she paid for everything because he never gave her anything, especially for me. He gave it for my brother because my brother was a boy, and of course the world was like that then.
And very tricky, isn't there? There was that sort of, it was that sort of, not misogynistic, very sexist in a way.
Boys, they didn't have any boys, and he was thrilled that my mother had a son, so, Yeah. But 2 generations on, I've only had boys, and I love little girls. And I have a lot of little girls that I love hanging, because they're so much fun. They can borrow all my clothes, they can, I have fun with them.
Oh, no, and your clothes are fantastic. We'll come on to the clothes a bit more as well. But
they might be very old now.
Oh, no. One gap in the stories that you were telling in your film as well was when you were sent off to Paris and you were in a hotel and you were told that the hotel bill would be paid for. And
it wasn't Paris, it was New York. My father, the little shit. My father I'd never met. So he gets this grandiose idea and said, you must come to New York. My mother said, don't go. You'll be you'll end up with a bill. He stole 60 grand from my mother when he first married her. So and that was a lot of money in 1960. I don't know what it is, but it's probably the equivalent of probably $1 million now, or 2 million. Anyway, he stole it. And I get out to New York and I stay and I ring him, but of course I couldn't get him, And so after about 3 weeks, I was panicking over the bill. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to pay this bill? And he said, no. I'm sorry, I haven't got any money this week. My sons do a fantastic, take it like this. Sorry. I haven't got COVID. And anyway, so he goes like this. I haven't got any money this week. So I thought, what do I do now? I have got no money. So I ring up my best friend, who ended up being my husband. And I said, listen, my husband's completely stuffed me. Not my husband, my father's completely stuffed me. He said he's going to pay for this bill and he's not going to. My mother told me he would do it. So it's worse. He said, don't worry, we'll just put the two bills together. I'm over and we'll just swap over. It was the Pierre Hotel in New York. Yeah. So we had a 2-bedroom flat there. It was very, very good. So it all worked out in the end. But at the beginning, I thought, oh my God.
It's a panicky moment. So that's how the bill was paid, because I wasn't quite sure in the movie.
No, I paid him back about 7 years later.
Fantastic.
So, because, it's always one of those cases,
Yeah. So
girls are always useless with money, as my sons always say.
Well, you said that your father, he was terrible with money and alcohol.
Yes, he was an alcoholic. But of course, I didn't know this. When I met him, he wasn't drinking. I met him 20 years old, but with my mother, he was drinking. So she was very, I've never drunk really in my life. I don't drink, because of that, really, So I don't like drugs. I once took sleeping pills for a bit and I was completely gaga. No, I have to live off black coffee, and I'm the happiest with that, really.
Extraordinary. And in terms of arts and growing up and so on and so forth, at home you said you'd always prefer to watch documentaries, but they would make you watch Dallas.
Oh, they didn't, because I went upstairs and I watched the documentary upstairs. I was mad at the time on World War II. It's in my DNA. He was writing about World War II. I didn't actually know what he was writing, but in any case, I just happened to like World War II and World War I, and I'd be looking at it all the time. I have intellectual pursuits without being an intellect. If I was sitting with an Oxford graduate and they were cross-examining me, they'd find great holes. But the fact is, I was a great enthusiast.
And talk about enthusiastic. I mean, your love life, which you mentioned early on, as going back a little bit, at 14, you said you were picked up on the school bus. Tell me about that.
Oh, picked up on the school bus, God. Yeah, I was just picked up on the school bus. That was not really very exciting. I don't think I had an exciting love life, probably until I was about 17. And my first husband, who I really loved very much. And he was in the wine trade. But, that's another problem. They drink too much in the wine trade, so it didn't work out really. Not because of the drink, but because I'm just not into alcohol. When I look back on it, I'm not into alcohol. And I think that without really realizing what money was, I liked very, very clever people, because honestly, I don't know what money was. I honestly didn't have anything. But I would say dreadful things. I remember 20 saying, I don't want to live in Battersea, I'm going to live in Mayfair. But I didn't know what I was saying or even what it meant. I just say it, so I would say a lot of things like that, and suddenly they were true, I know that sounds weird.
Yes, things
but I wouldn't. That's how I think my husband got rich. I'd have these sort of dreams, I would say something crass like that. And so I hope it worked out for my children.
First husband, the wine trade, and it didn't work out because of...
Yeah, but he's very much happier with another woman now, so he's okay.
Second husband, you mentioned about investment banking and...
Yeah, he was an investment banker, but he's owns head. He's a whiz kid. He was a whiz kid. I married him because he had cups. I remember going into his house in Sweden. He's Swedish. They're better educated than us. And we walked through the door And there were all these cups on every single wall. There were cups. And I thought, God, I've never won a cup in my life. I said, who's won all these cups? And he said, oh, I have. And I thought I better marry him because I've never won better DNA. You know, and I thought very much like that. I remember thinking very practically when I was young, which I wouldn't do now. I remember thinking that, you know, my mother bred dogs and they bred championship whippets. And my aunt did too. And I would always choose the champion, okay? In every litter, I had the ability, you know, I was good on shape and size and color. And I would choose the championship one in every single litter. And I think I was able to do that with men. You know, I just thought because, you know, they talk like that about them. They'd say, oh, this one's a good runner. That one's good at coursing. That one's good for show. They would mix them like that, you know, and breed from them like that. You know, it was very much what the other one hasn't got, the other one gives. And so that's how I think I thought. I thought, oh, well, I never want, if I'm going to have children, I better have one that's got cups.
No, very good. Oh, good idea. So when you go to a party now, and when you're allowed to go to parties, can you go in the room and spot straight away who has cut?
Who's got cups, who's clever. I think I've always had that ability. You know, I can just tell whatever they do. You know, my friends that I have in my life are always sort of brilliant, whatever they do. It doesn't matter whether they're girls or boys, but they sort of are very, very clever at what they do. Oh, they could be, you know, they could be the best cleaner, they could be the best, but anyone around me is somehow very, very good at whatever they do. And the gardener, I mean, you know, I don't like gardening, I hate gardening, but my gardener is so funny because she comes in and she loves gardening and she sort of turns up all the time. And I say to her, please don't talk to me about gardening. You know, she's so enthusiastic about cutting, you know, the plants on the walls and things. And I say, well, don't tell me anything about it. Suddenly, you know, my garden's looking beautiful. It's looking like the secret garden, beautiful.
That's wonderful. And you actually, well, according to the movie, you had a job in a florist originally. Is that right?
Yeah, I love flowers, but I don't like gardening. It's different. It is different.
But the job...
I wanted to work for the best florist in the world called Kenneth Turner. And at the time, this is 1982, and he was the best. And he did all the very, very rich women in America who spent a fortune on flowers, and I did the bills. He wouldn't give me a job as a florist, which was what I wanted. He gave me the job as the accountant when I thought, God, I can't see figures. Oh, well, I'll take the job and then I'll learn. And that's what I've always done in life. You know, I've always gone through life thinking, just say you can do it and hopefully you can.
Similarly with your job in the investment bank, they wanted a secretary, but you couldn't type. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I just, oh, that's quite interesting. But that's how I met my husband. Basically, I'd been on holiday in Antigua and I saw the best looking man across the room. And I thought, and it's when I was getting divorced, and I thought, that's the type of man I want to marry. And the following week, I'm looking in the Times because Ken didn't work out. And because I didn't want to ad and everything else. And this job spiraled down. And I could see that blonde man in the ad that I'd seen. And so they said, well, I ring up and I said, I really like your job. And lying like hell because I didn't give a damn about being a receptionist. Anyway, so they said, but the man you're working for is in Antigua this week. So I said, just give me the job, okay? I don't know how I knew. That's how I believe in psychic things. I can be psychic. And I said, just give me the job. And if he doesn't like me, he can get rid of me. Okay, so I go there the first week and there's the good looking man comes in. And then they say, you're working also for a 22-year-old who's impossible. I'm really sorry about that. I go upstairs and it was my ex-husband. So I sit on his desk and I say, can't you teach me Swedish instead of giving me your typing? I'm no good at typing. I can't tell you why I'm here because I couldn't tell him that I'd had this dream. Anyway, that's what happened. So
no, extraordinary. Okay. And
yes.
You mentioned about psychic and tarot cards and witchcraft and all those.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I sort of dabble in it for good things, you know, because of course there's an evil side. And I've often wondered how it works, you know. With my son, one son, I have to read the cards all the time. You know, I sit on the bed and I'm reading madly and I'm really very bored you know, because I don't trust them either. And I argue with them. And I can read tarot cards backwards. And I find it, I can't, if I read your cards right now, which I could do, I'd have no memory tomorrow about what I'd read. My friend that taught me, well, she's my ex-friend now because she's stolen my son, but that's another story. She's stolen Miss Evie Lake. Okay, so anyway, when I'm reading these cards and she taught me, she'd remember everything that she'd read the day before. But I think that you should forget everything that you've read because it's not your life, it's the other person's life. So I deliberately sort of forget what I've just read. And sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not, like everything. You can make them work anyway. And I think things happen if you repeat them in your head enough, good and bad. So you should only think good things. Try to only think good things.
Oh, no, it's great. Well, in your movie, you do all sorts of wonderful things with concoctions, and you put that into cakes, and you put salt down. And
oh yeah, I know. Well, we better not talk about that either. But I'll tell you the bit of magic that works within a day. You don't like somebody, you get a fresh bag of salt, and you get a fresh new broom, and you put the salt all the way around the room, okay, and you sweep it out saying, this person must leave you, this person must leave you. That has worked every single time. There's also the milk when you want to do, but I think the milk is too aggressive and violent because you have to boil it, keep boiling it and say horrible things, and I don't want to do that. I just wanted that if the people leave, we always do the salt or clean the house.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
my sons love it, you know, because they love it.
Fantastic stuff. Well, what we should do maybe in part 2, if you're up for a little bit more time. Do you have time today?
Yeah, I can do part 2 whenever you want. Oh, and yeah, we're not allowed out. We're in quarantine.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we could do part 2. This could be a series that runs forever and ever and ever. We bring all sorts of people.
But what else do you want me to talk about? Help.
Well, I'll tell you who I want to talk about in part 2. I want to talk about more of your fantastic writing, the stuff that you've done for Vogue. I want to talk about your
my book
your relationship with Tracy Emin and other fantastic artists, and also what you got up to with.
Well, I love the artist world, the art world. They're incredible.
Fantastic.
How are you editing this? Are you going to edit it?
Oh, I love it as it is. Unless there are any bits you feel shouldn't be in there. But I quite like this free-flowing thing like this, don't you?
I've got a pretty open life. I think everybody knows it.
I think it's great.
No secrets are lying with me.
It's wonderful. And I want to talk about Belinda Carlisle and your experiences in places like Northern Thailand and stuff like that.
Oh, we had fun together. I adore Belinda. I adore her.
In part 2, we're doing
other than she's a Democrat nowadays. She was the one who introduced me to David Icke. There you go.
Exactly. So all of that will be coming up in the next episode. But for now, Amanda, thank you very much for joining me.
Bye. Bye.
So thank you very much to Amanda for being my guest. Do come back to find out a little bit more about Amanda's fantastic life. And if you'd like to be a guest yourself, you can write to me at Andrew Eborn at Octopus TV. And you can follow on all the usual platforms at Andrew Eborn at Octopus TV. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and other platforms. But for me, for now, join me next time. See you then. Bye-bye.